Welcome to the Global Investor Podcast, a show that focuses on helping foreign investors enter the lucrative U.S. real estate market. Host Charles Carillo combines decades of real estate investing experience with a professional background in international banking to interview experts in all areas of U.S. real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Charles Carillo.
Do you have money sitting in the stock market and you're worried about it? Or worse, you have money sitting at the bank, not keeping up with inflation? My name is Charles Carillo, founder and managing partner of Harborside Partners. And since 2006, I've been investing my money and my family's money into income-producing properties. These are real assets, real properties with real addresses that produce real cash flow. At Harborside Partners, we provide passive investors who love real estate with a turnkey investing solution. If you want to put your money to work in real estate but can't find deals, don't have the time to get funding, and the last thing that productive people want to do is manage real estate. We find the deals, we fund the deals, and we manage the tenants, the termites, and the properties. Partner with us at investwithharborside.com. That's investwithharborside.com. Go to investwithharborside.com. If you love real estate, you like the idea of passive income, and believe that income-producing properties will appreciate over time, go to investwithharborside.com. That's investwithharborside.com. Welcome to another episode of the Global Investors Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Carillo. Today we have Daniel Kwak. He started learning about real estate investing at age 20, did his first deal at the age of 22, and by 23, he had 83 rental units. Since then, Daniel and his brother have raised millions of dollars for real estate while also running a YouTube channel with over 275,000 subscribers. So thank you so much for being on, Daniel.
Hey, it's a pleasure, man.
So give us a little background on yourself prior to getting involved in real estate investing.
Yeah, I'll do my best to make it quick because I know usually when I listen to podcasts, which is I listen to a lot, I'm kind of just like, all right, man, just hurry up and give me the golden nuggets and let me get out of here. So very short background. I'm an immigrant to the United States at 5 years old. To say we were poor is an understatement. I mean, multiple nights our family would sleep in the car because we couldn't afford to pay the heating bill. Slept in the car, and most nights didn't have dinner. I loved going to school because it meant I got a meal. So I learned the value of the single dollar. If anything, I'm more grateful that my parents were poor as opposed to rich, because I don't think I'd have the work ethic I have today. So that led to me being 18 years old. I had negative $187.65 in my bank account. And I still remember it like it was yesterday, looking down at I think I had a Samsung Galaxy S2 at the time, which is mind-boggling to me, right? That we now have like the S22, right? We have all these technological advancements. How long before they put microchips in our bodies? So I remember I still to this day looking down and seeing that negative number in my account. Had a couple maxed out credit cards, and one day I decided to do something about it. And so I started learning about real estate. And the way I got to know about real estate is I read an article like Forbes magazine when I was 17 years old, saying that out of the top 1% of people in the world, 76% of those people made their money by investing in real estate. So I was like, ooh, got to do that. And it turns out not only do I want to do it, but I actually really like doing it. So here we are. I guess you could say the rest is history.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you see those stats, and it's also one of the things too is if you ever look through like a Forbes 400 list of something, and people make their money in real estate, or like a lot of it's held in it, and it's just kind of it's amazing how that works, but it's true. So what was your first real estate investment, Daniel? Like when you got started, what was your strategy? You didn't have many funds. You were just, beginning. Like, what did you do and how did you do it?
Yeah. In many ways, I'm glad I didn't have a lot of funds. A lot of people see that as a curse, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I wish I had $1 million right now that I could just invest. And, I'm glad I didn't, because it changed the way I look at the marketplace. It changed the way I look at business. It changed the way I look at so many different things. And so instead of me saying, oh, man, I wish I had $1 million, the mindset and the mentality that I developed, I mean, mainly to give credit where credit is due to my relationship with God, my mentality changed to, okay, what value can I bring to people so that way they can get me the $1 million to get the apartment building, right? Or to get the piece of real estate. So the first deal that my brother and I did was a portfolio of 4 single family houses. And it was in this little place called Kankakee, Illinois, which anybody will tell you is not necessarily the Beverly Hills of the country. Let's put it that way. But we bought it through we posted something on Facebook. I think my brother posted something on Facebook, something along the lines of like, hey, we're looking for maintenance people for our real estate investing team. And he made that post in one of those like buy, sell, trade Facebook groups. Like, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like every town has those buy, sell, and trade, right? So we posted there, and we had a property manager who was also a landlord reach out to my brother, and he goes, hey, like I've got 19 houses that I want to offload. Can we have a conversation about that? And so we ended up buying 4, and that's how we did our first deal. We raised money from a family friend. And funny enough, right? Like it's like when you tell enough people about what you do, people get interested, right? Because the minute you start talking about what you do online, people immediately, for some reason, go to how can that benefit me, right? That's just the way us humans are wired. And I'd say that's the first thing I tell people all the time. When you're starting in your real estate journey, especially if you haven't done a deal yet, get really, really good at identifying what people want and how you can give it to them, and how you can monetize that, right? Like that's a really, really good question to ask yourself. I mean, really at any point in your real estate career.
So when you're going on from these 4 units, how did you guys manage them? Because you're located on the West Coast, correct?
No, so we're located in the Midwest. So
okay, Midwest.
we live in the Chicagoland area.
Okay, so it's right there.
So I grew up here. This is where my parents chose, and we immigrated here. We lived here ever since. I'm a diehard Chicago Bulls Bears fan. So, come at me if you're a sports fan of any other city. Although the Bears aren't looking so great this year, but either way, yeah. So we started there with the 4 units, and we didn't manage them. We had somebody else manage them. So the guy that we actually bought them from actually managed the properties, because the way we saw it is, hey, you've owned these properties and you've managed them for the last 15, 20 years. Why would we want to disrupt that? So, we just we had him manage. And well, a lot of that has to do with the fact that we were both college students at the time. And we didn't necessarily have the time to manage.
How did that work out? Like with him managing? I've never heard that before.
It worked out pretty well. People always say, hey, there's good property managers, bad property managers. There's good investors, bad investors. Honestly, at the end of the day, there's just good people and bad people. That's it. 90% of the mistakes that I've made in terms of choosing to work with people I wish I haven't worked with, 90% of it had to do with integrity and morals and values as opposed to incompetency, right? Like very few times in my career where, somebody's mistake has costed me money, and knock on wood, none of my investors have lost money yet. I've never lost any investors any money. 90% of those problems had to do with ethics and values as opposed to, I didn't know, or I forgot, or, I'm not proficient in that, particular lane of running a business or running a real estate portfolio. So, I mean, I always tell people, when you're looking for a good property manager, make sure you have a good person first. And when you actually look at it from that standpoint, hiring people becomes much more simpler and easier. As almost every successful person will tell you, a lot of this is simple. Except people tend to make things more complicated.
Yeah, no, I see that a lot. But so tell us, after you did these 4 houses, what did you do in your business, you and your brother, to go from 0 to 83 units in a year? Because that's some growth.
Sure. So I'll give you my cheat code, right? Which is this is the part where people are like leaning in, right? As they listen to the podcast, driving home from their work, So the process that I see a lot of people forgetting is, for them, when they do their first deal, the thought is, how can I do another one? And how can I do another one? How can I do another one? How can I do another one? And then you get to a certain point where you just keep asking that question over and over and over again. And for me, the mentality that I had is, it was more so, how do I not do the next deal? How do I actually build a business? And most people don't know how to build a business. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine who is a very notable figure in the real estate world. And that's one of the things that him and I talk about all the time is, what are the, not regrets, but what are something you would have done differently since the beginning of your career? And an answer that I've seen him give hundreds and hundreds of times is like, yeah, I wish I would have read more books on actually building a business, as opposed to like building a real estate portfolio. Because my thought process was, okay, how do businesses scale? Well, you raise capital, right? So, after I did my, first deal or so. I think the deal I did right after that was an 8-unit apartment complex. And, it was around that time, right before that time was when I really started focusing on, hey, like, how do I actually raise capital? But not only that, but how can I actually create a system of deal flow? Because I think a lot of people, like, for example, if I did a webinar right now on, hey, what are the top 3 best ways to find deals? We would have thousands of people join that webinar. Like, a lot of people would join that webinar. However, if I, talk to you about, hey, like, how to leverage virtual assistants, how to, employ people, right? Like, if I taught a much higher level on how to create a system, I would make the argument that not as many people would show up to that one.
Right.
Which is just sad for me. Even before then, I focused, okay, how do I actually build a business as opposed to just doing deals? And that allowed me to think about, instead of finding deals, how do I actually create a system where deals can come to me? Instead of raising capital, how can I create a structure where, investors find me? And I have the ideal individual that I want, right? Just like how with any company, every organization has what's called their ideal avatar, their marketing avatar. And it's literally a list of a bunch of things, characteristics that make up their dream customer, right? Their perfect customer. And if you're somebody that wants to go from having done 10 units, having 10 rental doors to 100, that's the first thing that I would recommend people do is identify what are the top 3 things you need to get there and identify your dream customer with doing that. So not only identifying your dream investor, like what does that dream investor look like? Are they an individual who just sold their company for $25 million and they have 3 million that they want to employ in liquidity? Or are they a doctor that lives in San Francisco Bay Area making $400,000 a year and their CPA is telling them to get into real estate for tax reasons? So identify what your dream customer is for your investors, but also the same thing for sellers. Who's your ideal seller? Who's your dream seller? Is it somebody who's 65 years old, needs to retire and wants to sell on seller financing? Or is it a 36-year-old who wants to sell their 8-unit because they want to go off and do bigger and better deals, right? Yeah. Depending on the answer to that question, the way you market and the way you find these people is going to be very, very different. It's going to be very, very different. And so last piece of nugget before you ask me your next question is, instead of finding properties, look for people. Instead of trying to find capital, look for people. If you look for people, a lot of times things get way, way easier. So even today, like my ways of finding deals is like, we don't do mailing campaigns. We don't do direct mail. We don't do it. Because for me, that's a way to find the property, and that's okay. Right. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. Everything works, right? Like the infamous marketer, Dan Kennedy, right? He says everything works if you do it enough. Right. But for me, my philosophy is, how do I find the people? As in, how can I reach out to bankers who can then connect me with individuals that they know who've owned properties for 20, 30 years? How can I get in touch with different networks and areas and corners of certain societies and communities where a lot of these landlords that I'm looking for hang out? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And it's funny you said that about the VAs doing a VA webinar versus investing in real estate. Because now when I think back, as you're talking about any mentor I've ever had within real estate or coach around it, they've never suggested me to read a real estate book. It's always other books around business and or mindset. So it's I never put 2 and 2 together like that, but that's definitely true. But when you're doing, like when you were going, 40 units to 83 units, you're doing that. Is that seller financing that you were utilizing at that point? Raising money and seller financing? Because obviously
it was, most of it was seller finance deals. So, we coined a little term called the force strategy, right? So my brother is a big Star Wars fan and he's kind of the marketing whiz between the two of us. He's being our chief marketing officer. But the force strategy stands for find the deal. So that's F. Owner finance it, raise the capital. So that's FOR, right? C is cash flow it. And we talk about property management. And then the last one, E, stands for expand the business, meaning that, hey, actually learn how to build the infrastructure where you can actually scale and support another 30, 40, 50 units. Because that's another thing that really separate good entrepreneurs from great ones is the great ones know how to look ahead and anticipate the needs and the problems of the next level, and they prepare for that. I always tell people, like, entrepreneurs who are always destined or at the level where they can only handle 30 units will inherit a 300 unit portfolio and take it down to 30 in a matter of a couple years. or at least 3 or 4 or 5, right? So, I mean, even just asking yourself the question is, with who I am and the systems that I've built and the structures that I have in place and the frameworks that I have, can I handle 20 units? Can I handle 50? Can I handle 100? We can want and dream all we want, but are we prepared? Just like how if you're pregnant, you're going to buy the nursery, right? Like you're going to buy diapers, you're going to buy the crib and the mattress and all these things. Like, you have a registry and all this stuff, and you kind of go around the store and just have people buy whatever you want, right? Which is what a strange concept, but it's so, acceptable in today's society. But think about that. That's a great analogy, right? Like even before the baby comes, you're getting the room all ready and prepared. It's the same thing with real estate. If that baby is 100-unit portfolio, do you have the crib already bought? Do you have the diapers? Do you have the baby lotion? Do you have all these things ready to the point where that baby can come home from the hospital and you're prepared, you're fine? 95% of investors don't have that.
No. Yeah, they don't have their team set before they're looking for deals, and I see it all the time because you don't have a property manager, you don't have this, you don't have an insurance agent, you don't have all these things lined up that you're going to need. Like, hey, when I get that deal, what do I do with it? I don't know. Well, I'm going to underwrite it. Well, what do you have for that? So,
well, it's the same with raising capital. Like I get the question all the time, like, Daniel, how do I raise capital? First and foremost, it's a very selfish question because look at the focal point of that sentence. It's I. Yeah. That's the main noun, and that you're utilizing. You are the focal point, as opposed to, hey, what can I do to serve other people? Because I would make the argument that there's way more people who want to invest into real estate with at least $100,000 in their investment account than people who actually know what they're doing in this real estate investing world, right? Yeah. I would 100% make that argument. But it's the same thing, right? It's like the question I usually fire back is, all right, well, what's your product? Like at the end of the day, raising capital is sales. You're selling a product. And that product is broken down into 3 things. The product is you as the real estate entrepreneur and operator. The second is the asset that you're actually trying to raise money for and sell. And number 3, it's your business plan. Like, what's your actual plan? Like, I get you want to go after a 36-unit apartment building, but, at the end of the day, like, what overall strategy does that 36-unit building fall under? So you as the operator, they gotta buy into you as the operator. Like, I'm convinced, like, you can take a bad business idea, you can put an amazing entrepreneur and it'll work, right? So you as the operator, they have to buy into that. They have to buy into the deal that you're trying to get them into, and you have to get them to buy into the strategy. Like, what is the actual business strategy you're going to do with that apartment building? Are you going to value add? Are you going to, what type of financing are you structuring? What's the 5-year play? What's the exit strategy looking like, right? You get it. So they have to buy into that. And most people who want to raise capital don't have that figured out. And it's just like, dude, you're asking me, how do I have $1 million a year in revenue? And you don't even know what your product and your offer is. Like, how are you going to do that? Right? Like, so how are you going to raise capital from investors when you yourself don't have a strategy, when you yourself don't have a, like things that you're going after? Like, what do you do? So again, it's just very interesting, right? Like people, there's invisible barriers, right? To each and every level of real estate.
Interesting. So Daniel, what is your firm's current investment criteria? Like, what are you targeting? You're targeting, I imagine, larger properties. Are you using similar techniques or completely different techniques than you were, let's say, when you started?
To raise capital or to do anything for that matter?
Just like what kind of deals what kind of deals is your firm? What are you guys focusing on? And then how are you sourcing those deals? I imagine if they get larger, they're coming from, you're not putting ads on Facebook for 100-unit complexes. You are going the brokers, but like some of that must still be relevant in your process today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a couple different real estate opportunities that people can, get more information about. So one is it's a real estate hedge fund I started about 4 years ago. And all they do is real estate hard money lending. And, the guy operating it is a total stud. He's a good friend of mine. His name's Kevin. And he's an actual, absolute brother. And he's got a little bit more gray hair than I do, right? He's about double my age. But at the same time, he spent, I think, 20 plus years in Wall Street. It was one of the top private money managers and, ran his own hedge fund for a very, very long time. And, he loves lending, right? Real estate hard money lending. And he's done that for a long time, bridge lending to be exact. So we have that. I kind of just sit on their board and, give advice here and there. share my thoughts on the market. And then another opportunity that I have is a company I started with my very good friend and brother, Andrew Willemese. And him and I, we started a real estate partnership, and we're going after anything between 50 and 200 units. And we're specifically going after lower end Class B, upper Class C. It's my personal opinion based on my research that there's an overbuilding and an overdevelopment of Class A apartment buildings in America. I mean, to give you some data, we right now have approximately 803,000 multifamily units that are currently in development. We haven't seen a number that high since 1973. And when you parallel that with 800,000 single family housing units in construction as well, with the amount of shadow inventory that's been placed, right, due to moratoriums that we've had in the country the last 2 years because of the pandemic, we're talking about a giant inventory shift that's happening right now as we speak over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. So as that inventory shifts, and I think, we've had absurd amount of rent increases as a nation. I think the number was 15.6% in year over year increase in rents, right, for people that are renting. And to give you an idea, I live in Illinois. We are arguably the worst state for people leaving, right? Like it's us in California. Like we're the state where everyone wants to get out, right? And yet, in my area where I live, the cost of rent for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath Class A apartment unit has gone up 36%. Wow. I mean, which is absurd. The place that my wife and I used to rent, our rent went from 21, and when we're about to renew our lease, they wanted 27. So, I mean, you're talking about a dramatic increase. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've had such a low inventory in the housing market, and a lot of people were forced to go into Class A apartments. So, the reason why we're going after Class B and upper Class C is because I just see a giant movement of income saturation happening in the Class A market, over the next 12 to 18, potentially even 24 months. So, I think affordable housing is going to be the major winner over the next 2-3 years based on everything I've researched and the individuals that I'm talking with. So we're going after those deals. The most important thing for me is we secure long-term fixed rate financing. A lot of big syndication guys, whom a lot of them are my friends, and I love them to death, but I'll tell them that, listen, the way that you guys are structuring your financing is extremely risky, because a lot of these guys are buying 300 unit complexes, first and foremost, overpaying for them, like buying them at, 200 basis points below the market value cap rate that they should be at. And they're structuring 2-3 year financing in an environment where the Federal Reserve increased rates by 150 basis points over the last 3-4 months. I mean, like, come on, like what, you're just like putting a sign on your front door that says, hey, like I want risky deals, right? So, it makes me really nervous because I see a lot of people structuring bridge financing. A lot of people are doing that, and mezzanine as well. And so the question that I have is, well, like, what's going to happen if, a lot of these guys are buying into Class A and rent's not going as high as they thought, valuation is not as high as they thought, LTV is not as low as they thought it'd be, and all of a sudden their bank is calling them and says, hey, your 2-3 years of bridge financing are coming due. We got to transfer you to some type of conventional financing. And oh, by the way, our interest rates and our commercial rate has gone up by 2-3%. I don't see that going so well, and again, maybe I'm wrong, right? Like I'll definitely continue to do my research, but based on everything I've seen so far, that's something that makes me very nervous.
Yeah. Class B is our favorite. That's exactly, you have that, either they still have good bones, the properties, they're in good areas, but you can't make more of it. You can't make more of a product that's 30 years old. So I definitely agree with what you're saying. But Daniel, let me talk more about you. You and your brother have built this YouTube channel with over 250,000 subscribers.
Thank you.
And what are some strategies you've utilized when building your subscriber base that have yielded the biggest results?
So there's a guy that I absolutely love, and we've been coached by him, and he actually coaches a YouTuber. I don't know if a lot of people who listen to this podcast will know who he is. Well, maybe your kids will, but there's a YouTuber that goes by the name of Mr. Beast. And, he's one of the, he's probably the biggest creator on YouTube, right? He's got over 100 million subscribers. Wow. And believe it or not, just one of his, I think his worst performing video gets as much views as the Super Bowl. which is insane to think about, right?
Yeah.
Like I think his worst video gets like 50 million views, which is nuts. But there's a guy that coaches him. He also coaches me, a guy named Daryl Eves, and he said something to me that was really impactful. And he goes, when starting a YouTube channel, there's two piles, like a Venn diagram, right? On one side, you have what your channel stands for. And on the other side, you have what people actually care about. And your first 50 videos have to be in that middle. And that's how you hit 100,000 subscribers, right? Like once you develop a fan base, you have a little bit more flexibility. But, you know, if I were to instruct someone on how to build a YouTube channel today, I'd say figure out what that middle looks like for you.
Interesting. Okay. How have you, because I was doing some research on this as well prior to our interview, and you've niched down the focus to gain more subscribers. So tell me about this, because this is, I think when you're ever niching something down and getting back to what you're talking about, avatar, it always scares creators because you're like, oh, I'm going to alienate all these people or whatever. Tell me why that's not true or why it might be true, and then what you've done.
Because it's a very selfish way of thinking, right? Like the minute you start talking about, oh, I'm going to lose less at the expense of serving a certain crowd of people, it's a very selfish way of thinking. And it's not quote unquote wrong. Like most people don't know that it's a selfish way of thinking. But, you know, so I'll give you a great example. So 2 years ago, you know, we post a lot of stuff about the housing market and real estate, and we still do to some capacity. But I remember my director, Nick, who was just in here fixing my mic, you know, he said to me, he came to me, goes, hey, man, I really think you should start talking about this thing called the Great Reset. And I'm like, what is it? You know, and at first I just thought it was another conspiracy theory, right? I was like, you know, it's probably the same people who, you know, believe that frogs are homosexuals or whatever, right? Like the birds are the drones of the government that come up with this. And I started looking into it, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually a real thing. Like, you know, if you actually go on the website of the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset is one of their biggest agendas. And they literally they've put out a video telling the world what they want by the year 2030. And, you know, I can get into what that world looks like, but, you know, either way, we did a video and it blew up. It got like 189,000 views during a time when that was considered a really, you know, viral video for us at least, right? And so we released the second one, got 430,000 views. Released the third one, now that one's at 1.1 million views. And so, you know, Daryl kind of coaches, goes, hey, I really think you should keep talking about this thing, because you found a group of people that really need your help, that really want to hear your voice when it comes to this particular topic. And, you know, you guys have an opportunity to articulate at the end of the day what people want. So we've been posting a lot about political finance, you know, just to be open and vulnerable with you. I feel like we're at a time now in 2022 where everyone's so afraid to share their own opinion. But I'll be very honest. I lean conservative. You know, I'm one of those guys where, you know, I don't think transgender athletes should compete with women. Like, I think we're pretty screwed up as a society, actually, to the point where we can't even answer a question on what is a man and what is a woman. I think that is a byproduct of a lot of pain and a lot of, you know, unproductive and very misstrued way of thinking, if that makes sense. You know, now granted, I'm one of those people that I'll listen to anybody and everyone. You know, I try to be as compassionate as I possibly can. I'm a very people-oriented person, but these are things that I genuinely find interesting. You know, and so we started posting stuff like that. And when we did that, in a span of 2 years, we went from, I think, 68,000 subscribers to now today we're at 285. Wow. So, you know, there was one, so do you remember watching a show called Malcolm in the Middle?
Yes. Yeah.
So it was one of my favorite shows growing up. I thought it was so funny. My wife and I just recently finished the show together, but there was one episode where the oldest brother, Francis, tells the youngest brother at the time, Dewey, this line, and it just like stuck with me. But he tells Dewey, he's like, hey, Dewey, you know, in life, we don't get to choose the people that need our help. And I was so blown away by that, because it's so true, right? Like we don't have a choice in the people that need our help. You know, we don't choose that. They find us because they need help, right? And you know, that line stuck with me so, I mean, it resonated with me so much because I think every single one of us, especially as entrepreneurs, we all have an image and a picture of how we want our career to go. We all have this nice picture with sunshine and rainbows on how we want people to see us. That's why 90% of us who are hard-driven entrepreneurs want to be on stage in front of 2, 3, 4, 5,000 people. We all secretly desire that, whether you want to admit it or not, right? So for me, it was that journey of, okay, like how do I actually, not without sacrificing, my goals or without sacrificing how God has wired me, but how can I adjust in a way where, I do serve the people that need my help? And what are the problems that I want to solve for people and entrepreneurs and real estate investors? And that actually is what inspired me to, for us, our team, to launch our coaching program we call First Deal Mentor, where we help, high net worth individuals, or really anybody, right, get into their first real estate deal. That's what we do. That's the people that we help. Is we just help people, whether they're business owners or, whether they're, an art teacher, we help them get to their first deal and complete their first deal to the point where I'm literally showing them step by step what you need to do. And I think a lot of people are frustrated, Charles, right? Like everyone goes to seminars, we listen to podcasts, we read books, and we get a lot of great information. But at the end of the day, I truly believe there are people out there who just go, okay, that's all great, but what do I need to know just for my first one, right? What do I need to know just for this one that I want to do? Because I think a lot of people are just like, man, if I could just do one, right? Like that will be the world of difference, So, yeah.
So with that program going on, as we finish up here, what are common mistakes you see real estate investors make from that come into your program, or people that you've just spoken to or listened to, other than you mentioned prior about the fixed term variable debt, stuff like that, but anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah. I'd say the biggest piece of advice I tell people is, maybe I'm a little biased, but, hire a coach. Like hire a coach. And I get the logic of what a lot of people say, right? There's like, well, and by the way, we charge a fraction of what these big guys charge, but like these big guys are charging 25, 30, 40, 50 grand, right? Like I know certain companies that are charging $60,000, right? It's ridiculous. Just especially if you're wanting to do your first deal, come on guys. Right. So we charge a fraction of that. Right. But I always tell people hire a coach, because I get that you can spend that money to put down on a down payment on a house, but the coaching, the goal, the objective of the coaching, for me at least, right, is not for you to make more money. Like it's great, right? Like if you join our coaching, you will make money for sure. You will get your deals done. But my priority is, let me make sure you don't lose money, right? Yeah. Like that's where the true value of our program is at. It's not helping you make $1 million a year, although with the information that we provide, I'm sure you will get there, right? You will. But it's more so about, hey, let's not have you mess up. Let's make sure you don't lose 45 grand in your first deal. Let's make sure you don't lose, 60,000 or 150,000, or worse, let's make sure you don't lose any of your investors' money. So, I tell people all the time, like, look, you're going to pay for education some way, shape, or form. You're either going to pay for it with me, or you're going to pay for it out there in the marketplace. And I guarantee you that 99% of the time, the cost of education in the marketplace is 10x more, 100x more than what we're going to charge you, or anyone else is going to charge you for that matter.
Daniel, what do you think are the main factors that have contributed to your success over the years?
Networking. That is, I will tell you, that is the number one skill set for me, was networking. And, even before that, I would say if you could identify the top 2 or 3 things that you're really, really good at, that's going to be your vehicle to providing value into the marketplace. So I'd say for me, networking was number 1. And number 2 is leadership. I've learned very early on that, I have a lot of natural skills that make me a good leader. And over the last 2-3 years, I've been, really working hard, and I've hired a lot of people to make sure that natural gift is enhanced, right, and honed. So I'd say leadership and networking is what contributed a lot of my success.
So how can our listeners learn more about you, your business, and your coaching, Daniel?
Yeah, I love giving out free stuff. So I know I'm not Oprah, but I try to give as many free stuff as I can. So if you go to the kwakbrothers.com and there's a tab that says free stuff, you can click on that and you'll literally see everything from a free 3-hour owner financing class that I put together, where I literally teach people how I negotiate for seller financing, how to find sellers that want to do seller financing. We have a free real estate course in there, right? Teach people how to raise capital, right? We call that real estate base camp, right? Because if you think about a journey up the mountain, that base camp is super duper important to have at the base of the mountain. So we have that one there. My brother did a productivity class, and I also do a free meetup every other Tuesday. So
Nice.
As long as you plug in with us and, we send out emails and, whatnot. And so, we do a free meetup every other Tuesday, which I think if you just Google Kwak Brothers Real Estate Meetup, you'll be able to find it. But free meetup, free course. And I also give out a free book. So if all that wasn't enough, I'll throw in a free book in there as well. And so I think with the book, all you got to do is just pay for shipping. So just go to the kwakbrothers.com/free stuff. And all that stuff is there.
Right. And it's KWAK. That's how you say your last name.
KWAK.
So thank you so much for coming on, Daniel. It's been a pleasure. A lot of great information for our listeners, and looking forward to meeting up with you and connecting in the near future.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Talk to you soon.
Hi guys, it's Charles from the Global Investors Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're interested in getting involved with real estate, but you don't know where to begin, set up a free 30-minute strategy call with me at schedulecharles.com. That's schedulecharles.com. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Global Investor Podcast. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play to get new weekly episodes. For more resources and to receive our newsletter, please visit globalinvestorpodcast.com. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode.
Nothing in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this podcast are limited to accredited investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure, subscription documentation, and are subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Syndication Superstars, LLC exclusively.